Hi, my name is Paul Conway, and I serve as the Chair of Policy and Global Affairs for the American Association of Kidney Patients. Welcome to our fourth annual Policy Summit. In the first session of our summit, we're focused on opportunities, current and emerging policy and legislative issues that impact kidney patients here in Washington, D.C., on Capitol Hill, and in the executive branch. Our next speaker is Chris Leibenguth, and Chris serves as the Director of Federal Affairs and Alliance Development for Baxter Healthcare. Baxter's been a longtime leader as well in the field of kidney disease innovations and treatments. And Chris has the unusual role of serving both as a champion for patient alliance development and as the person who sets the agenda for Baxter Healthcare in Washington. He prioritizes the issues and then looks to find allies that are most important to support their efforts. AAKP has been a longtime friend of Baxter. We've done many things on Capitol Hill and across the executive branch together. And they're a leader in home dialysis, an issue that is close to the heart for AAKP so that patients can have the choices they need in a timely basis. One of the issues that Chris is going to connect with us on is the high priority that has to happen in terms of coordination between regulatory agencies and payment agencies, and how the lack of that coordination can sometimes interfere with the access patients should have to timely treatment. Hey, Chris, just a couple of questions for you. I know that Baxter, all the way from the research side to the development side to manufacturing to government affairs, has always been interested in the insights of patients and incorporating those insights. And you've demonstrated the same interest in AAKP's ability to collect insights both at the national level and as we've expanded globally. Can you tell me how patient insights inform research and development and product development at Baxter, and how important that independent patient voice is to have as an ally?
So an independent patient voice is essential to everything we do at Baxter. All of the things you list, research and development, manufacturing, and public policy engagement, is all predicated by and with the patient voice. In many respects, it's our guiding light. We can't make those decisions in a vacuum. So to successfully build new therapies, we have to have that patient voice. To physically build them, manufacture them, we have to have that patient voice. And to appropriately advocate for better regulatory and payment policies, we have to have that patient voice. And I think the most important word that you used in your question is independent. This doesn't work if it's a situation of the cart leading the horse. We have to properly hear the patient. That voice has to be independent. Otherwise, it's not real. And if it's not real, then all of our work falls apart. It loses its value. And so in many respects, the patient voice, the independent patient voice, is critical to everything we do.
Hey, Chris, here's a second question for you. AAKP, as you know, has been a longtime champion of patient care choice. And we firmly believe that quality care is defined by treatments that allow patients to pursue their aspirations. So one of the questions I have for you is, when we engage with the federal government, we try to make certain that agencies, whether they're regulatory or payment, are thinking in terms of how do you move innovation together as a group of agencies to make certain that timely delivery of new innovations is not held up in the bureaucratic process. So as patients, we have a viewpoint on that, but I'm interested if you could give our viewers a viewpoint from industry's standpoint on what the best case scenario is when there's alignment with regulatory agencies and payment agencies, and what the worst case scenario is, and how you think that translates into patient access. Thank you.
Thanks. So for me, it's pretty straightforward. We need federal agencies that regulate innovations to be aligned. If you have two agencies that have differing, not necessarily competing, but differing points of views on, let's say, what is critically relevant or clinically relevant to a patient, then we're going to have problems. Why is that? Because we, the manufacturer, will drive the collection of evidence to meet one standard, but then another agency will want to see something different. Then we're in a situation where the innovation gets essentially jammed up in the system. When one agency looks at our data and says, yeah, this looks good, and another looks at the same data and says, no, this isn't what we're looking for, well, that's a problem. So encouraging alignment between these agencies, or maybe creating that alignment, becomes really important. When we're looking at what the next innovation is, what goes through our minds? Well, it's A, how do we build it? And then B, how do we prove that it does what we say it does? And that process starts at the very beginning for us. So what we need is consistency in terms of what the government expects to see. And sort of bringing this back to the patient voice is another reason why having a strong independent patient voice is so critical, because that voice can inform the government and help them build that consistency. Once we have the consistency, once those agencies are aligned in terms of what they're looking for, when we build the innovations, we can sort of set out to prove based on all these sort of aligned standards, right? And then we have a sort of a direct pathway where those innovations can be built, they can be proven to be safe and effective, but also improve outcomes, and then they can get right into patients' hands. When we have that disalignment, when we have agencies that have different requirements, then we have problems where people are doing innovation, but it's not reaching patients. And I think that that's the worst case scenario. We can fix that by engaging government, by patients being loud and vocal, but also encouraging them to meet the same standards, and maybe even helping create mechanisms that allow them to do so.
Hey, Chris, a final question for you. Can you tell me what the practical impacts of COVID-19 have been on the issue of home dialysis and patient access to home dialysis? And then the second part of the question is, can you tell us if there are any issues that are moving through the U.S. Congress right now or in federal agencies that impact patient access to home dialysis care, or some of the new innovations that you see on the horizon line that are coming to accommodate patients who want to do more home care in the COVID-19 environment? Thank you.
Thanks. So, COVID presented a huge challenge for home dialysis realm. And what happened essentially is you had this renewed interest in patients going home, both new patients and existing patients, because obviously they wanted to be in the safety of their homes, and there was an option, home dialysis, that existed. So there was this interest in movement towards home dialysis, but that interest ran into some tough sort of structural realities, things like nursing shortages, or just simply not enough space in an operating room to do a catheter placement. So like logistical hurdles that had to be overcome. And in a lot of sense, a lot of these things are solvable. But the one thing that I think that we need to focus on the most is ensuring that patients have better connectivity to their providers. This is a very scary time for patients. Going home also presents another sort of hurdle in that you're in the safety of your own home, but you don't have that clinician around you all the time. And the thing that we need to work on, the thing that I think patients need to advocate for, is more telehealth, more connectivity with that clinician. And that in some ways is going and advocating to Congress, to policymakers, that any sort of barriers that exist that make it difficult to access their clinician using modern technology, it needs to be removed. It needs to be an easier prospect for a patient to talk to send their remote data. That you have your cycler. Your cycler is collecting data. That data can be then sent to the nurse, and the nurse can print it off and give it to the clinician. That process needs to be easier and more straightforward, and it needs to be incentivized, right? Because if we can incentivize that, then when we as Baxter are in a position to sort of continue to put new innovations in that sort of digital tool realm out into the market to help patients even further. And the more you have that, the more that patient then feels much more comfortable about being at home, being in the safety of their own home, being able to afford all of the great things that home dialysis provides, being able to keep your job, giving more flexibility in terms of how you want to live your life. But then in terms of how you manage the kidney disease and manage the dialysis, having those patient tools, having those digital tools, well, those then sort of wrap themselves around the patient. And so, if there are policies out there that, I think are put in place for good reasons, to protect patients, to make sure that the telehealth isn't sort of like the Wild West, I think that they're worth re-examining, given that we just went through all of this COVID stuff. that we were in our homes and had to adapt in a way that maybe we weren't prepared to do. And in a lot of sense, it worked well, right? Like we did a lot of things at home that we didn't expect that we were going to do, just everyone, right? Well, why can't we then create a new paradigm where patients can use digital tools, rely on remote patient monitoring, and give them more of a peace of mind and more connectivity to their clinician that allows them more independence? I think that that's the direction we need to go in terms of home dialysis. And I think that, again, that patient voice, that independent patient voice, is critical to making sure policymakers understand that this is what patients want, that they want to live their life more normally, right? And that's achievable if we can think through how to sort of bootstrap some of these tools into sort of how people are cared for.
Thank you very much, Chris. We appreciate Baxter's support for our fourth annual Policy Summit. Baxter's been a longtime innovation leader in the field of kidney diseases, and we appreciate the steady dedication they've brought to this issue and their support for our summits over the previous 4 years.